What's up, gamers? Dreamcastguy here, talking today about Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 Remastered. And just to be brutally honest here right at the start, this game is 99% perfect. It does have some technical things that we need to talk about, but for the most part, this is actually so much bigger, more expanded, and way more fun than I even could have predicted. Mostly because this is definitely a full-blown remake. From the levels, to the characters, to the physics, to even the giant tricks we're pulling off, this is basically a new game built upon the old bones. Now, thank you to the developers for the extra early review code. I've been playing this game for a couple days now, and it is difficult to even put down the controller because it is exactly what I like. Now, let's talk about what this game is when it comes to just the details, which is, this is Tony Hawk 1 and 2, but also with a bunch of extra added elements. Now, back in the day when you played Tony Hawk 1 and 2, typically you'd start out at the first level, and then by achieving a bunch of objectives, you'd slowly unlock more courses. As you drop into a map, there's a bunch of goals you have to accomplish, like getting 100,000 points, finding a secret tape deck, or maybe just doing something like smashing 5 boxes. It's almost like an arcade version of Score Attack combined with the scavenger hunt, and surprisingly, it's very, very fun. But as you go into these courses, you can immediately feel the biggest difference is the modernization. The physics are much more quick. When you're speeding along and trying to land on a rail, or just launching a giant vert ramp and trying to get a bunch of air, everything from the very core to the very expanded parts is faster, and I actually think that it is such a good change. It makes it where, as you're trying to explore these levels, or if you're making your own custom chain trick to get 1,000,000 points, it makes it so you feel so much more in control, and really less time is spent sitting on the ground watching your character stand up when you wipe out. Now, there are a bunch of new things in here that kind of impress me, but the biggest thing you need to be aware of is that this takes a bunch of elements from the late Tony Hawk games and brings them into here for kind of no reason. I mean, they're just sprinkled in here, and it makes it all way more smooth. Like, now you can actually bounce off walls. It's called a wall mount, so if you ollie into a wall, you'll push off it. There's stuff like reverts, which means you can actually chain together tricks even after doing a huge ramp trick. It does a bunch of small stuff, but something that's really interesting is they've decided to bring in the point system. So in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, they did something where your character starts off relatively weak. You're able to, of course, do stunts and take a fall and stuff, but you weren't exactly super swift. You're not Sonic the Hedgehog on a skateboard. But as you played the game, within each of the tracks, you'd actually find these special bonus points that let you go into the talent trees and boost the stats that you think are the most important, whether it be big air or raw speed or just how quickly you can turn in the air. Well, what they've decided to do is they actually took this and added it into Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1. So as you're going through these classic courses, not only do you have the convenience of modern physics and modern speed, but you also have these extra little hidden treasure hunts, basically. A chance to really explore the levels and find these things that make you stronger over time. Now, this is interesting because you can play the games in any order you want. You can do Tony Hawk 1 first or Tony Hawk 2 first, but your character levels up conjoined, which means that in my case, I decided to play through all of Tony Hawk 1 myself, and then afterward I went to 2, and my character at that point was already a beast, and it felt good. It didn't feel overpowered, it didn't feel easy, it felt like I had earned the right to do 200,000 point tricks, and all of it is really, really finely tuned. Many of these courses themselves also feel slightly modified, just a couple items moved around here and there to make everything much more streamlined. I mean, when you consider it, there have been a ton of different Tony Hawk games, and the fact that they're actually taking all that experience and combining it into the original games to make the perfect experience is completely impressive. But this does bring me to the one thing that I do have a little bit of a problem of, and this is an incredibly tiny gripe, but I think it's important to point out, something in this game feels like an auto-detect system, where as I was trying to pull off giant tricks and I'm like flying off a building or I'm going 100 miles an hour down a hill or something, it felt like it was trying to pull pull me when I was in the air towards a particular landing or like a rail. Like just as a specific example, if I'm flying off a huge space and I'm holding triangle to land on a rail and start grinding, it would feel like it was trying to pull me towards a rail, like just the tiniest bit, but it ended up actually making me miss tricks. Occasionally, I absolutely know I landed a trick. I know it in my freaking bones, and yet I'd end up face first on the pavement. Something in this feels like it's trying to be so streamlined that it becomes ever so slightly counterintuitive. It's just one of those things where I could feel myself stumbling occasionally when I really don't think I should have been. Now this does bring us to something else that's completely new, which is that there are a bunch of added characters. Lots of extra new people that have never been in a Tony Hawk game are sprinkled in here, and it's kind of interesting to see a bunch of people that, I'll just be honest, I had no idea a lot of these people existed, but they are incredibly fun to play as. And as I'm sure you've noticed, there's a mix of these new people, but there's also the original skaters who look like grandpas. They decided that it'd be funny to actually scan how the people look now, and it's accurate. I mean, this is definitely what Tony Hawk looks like now. It is a little bit jarring. I don't consider that a negative, but it is a little bit strange playing the game I grew up with, and now everybody is looking like they're gonna fall off the skateboard and just freaking die. I do like that they decided to add in things like custom skaters. It's nice that I could do the create a character and craft my own ultimate skateboard master, but what's kind of bizarre is that as you finish the objectives and unlock new courses and go to competitions, you get this money, you get cash, and you can go to the skate shop to purchase all sorts of new outfits, and there's actually hundreds of them, but only the custom character can wear them, and this is kind of confusing to me. I literally spent so much time trying to dig through the menus to see if there's any way to really give this like cool shirt to Tony Hawk, but it's not allowed. The people that are like the real skaters have these predetermined outfits, and you can unlock new outfits, but it doesn't seem like there's any way to like, I don't know, put like a cool new shirt on Tony Hawk. Everybody that's like an official real person who's licensed, you can't edit their clothing, which is kind of weird. I just don't understand that. Now let's talk about multiplayer, and let's talk about Create a Park. Now multiplayer has always been a very big deal to me. As a kid, I actually moved a lot. Every couple months, my parents would have to throw everything into a car, and we'd go to the next town. And it kind of made it incredibly difficult to make long-term friends. Obviously, right? It's hard to actually get a bunch of buddies when you're constantly just going to the next place and have to relearn your entire environment. But what I would actually do is I'd find the skaters. I'd find the kids that had skateboards outside, and these were the kids that typically were into Tony Hawk. And so a lot of times the best friends I'd make growing up were the people that I played a ton of multiplayer with, and in this, it is fantastic. They brought back all the game modes, from tag to graffiti to trick attack to horse. Everything is in here, and all of it is so freaking fun. And this is actually great because you can play couch co-op. This is straight up couch co-op right here that you're seeing. There is online modes as well. There's like casual and there's ranked modes, so you can, if you want, go on and just be super serious. But I love that this has totally old school classic co-op. I mean, it's just such a great experience. Now I have to talk about Create a Park because this is by far the biggest surprise to me, because back in the day we did have a Create a Park. It actually existed in the old Tony Hawk games, but here it's been hyper advanced. The biggest thing being that now you have essentially complete creative freedom. The way it worked in the old school versions, it was very limited. It was like Legos. You had these predetermined chunks of track, and they could only go in a specific spot, and they couldn't overlap. Here, you're pretty much allowed to do anything. I mean, the areas that we could build in are huge, which means you could put down hundreds of rails and ramps and verts and pools and all sorts of stuff that is really fun to actually skate on, and you can put these online so other people can skate on them. But what I actually had the biggest fun with is you can just make absolutely bonkers stuff. Like right here, I have to show you just the most absurd example, which is that at one point I decided to put 400 tiny ramps all on top of each other. And yes, I counted. This is actually 400 ramps. and I put them all the way around the edge of the map and then put some rails to combine them together so I could grind across 400 freaking rails in 1 minute to get a grand total of 1.6 million points. And oh my gosh, I crashed so many times attempting this trick. It is so exceedingly funny that my buddy Nick, who I grew up with, he's one of the buddies that I would actually play Tony Hawk with as a child, he came over, he was playing co-op, we were cry laughing at how ridiculous you can make Create a Park, because there's just no boundaries, there's no rules, it's whatever you can dream of, congratulations, you can make it a reality. This just so far excels beyond my expectations, and I highly recommend it. If you are at all into freaking Tony Hawk, this is now the ultimate way to play it. Okay, so we did hear a tiny bit of bad and a ton of good, but let's go to the ratings board and put a big number on it. I am giving Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 a 9.5 out of 10. To me, it seems like this last few years has been completely crazy when it comes to stuff like remakes and reboots and reimaginings. So many of these classic franchises are getting brought back, and the weirdest way is that it seems like they're so actually faithful. This is a respectful remaking of the original games, and it manages to just be so much better than I even could have thought. So if you like these games, if you want to actually grind some rails or try and fly off into space, well, here you go. This is definitely the game for you. Thanks so much for watching, gamers. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. It took me like an hour and a half to record the audio for this video because there is a huge storm in Texas, so if you hear any weird noises, I apologize, but I love you a bunch and stay safe. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.